sort of part of vacation day. Let's do, before we actually start to talk about the laws of Kashrut, let's start to talk a little bit about eating meat in the first place. Is it a good thing to eat meat, right?
I like doing that.
It's an important topic. There's many books written on the topic in terms of, Judaism and vegetarianism, and nowadays there's vegetarianism is not enough, right? There's there's vegan, where you don't have, what does that mean?
Any animal products at all.
Right, no eggs even, right?
No.
Nothing. So there's all kinds of, and everything in between, of course. So I'll just say, straight off the bat that I'm not a vegetarian. I do eat meat. And we find in the Torah, not so practical nowadays, but in the Torah, original description of what the ideal world is supposed to be, there's the concept of the Beit HaMikdash, where we have animal sacrifice, and part of those sacrifices are eaten by the owners, most famously being Korban Pesach. It's perhaps the only mitzvah to eat in the Torah is to eat the meat from the sacrifices, to eat the meat of the Pesach sacrifice. It was devolved upon every Jew. And so it sounds like this is part of the Torah mitzvah, the ideal situation. And but there's more. There's more in the Torah than that. And we go back to the book of Bereshit. Let's open up a Tanakh. If everybody could open up the book of the Tanakh. Everybody have a Tanakh here?
Here!
Oh, who sits here?
You.
Alex is sitting there.
Alex is not here.
So where do we find eating meat in the Torah?
Well, the first time I ever see eating meat in the Torah is by Noah.
Good. In Bereshit. Actually,
No, before that.
It's in contradistinction to Bereshit chapter 1. Chapter 1,
Yeah.
verse 29, it doesn't say eat the animals. It says,
Well, it says he's a
I'm
hunter.
giving
He's
you
not
all
doing
the
it for
plants.
sport.
Open up Bereshit Aleph, verse 29. Who's going to find it for us first?
I have it. What page?
3.
Page 3, go ahead.
Behold, I've given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in the width is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you shall be for meat.
For,
Meat.
well, that's an old English translation. The Hebrew word is le'ochla,
For
for
food.
eating, for food, right, exactly. So it doesn't actually say meat in chapter 1 of Bereshit. It says, I give you the fruit of the trees, and I give you the produce from the land. And according to the Gemara, that means that for first man, Adam HaRishon, he was forbidden from having meat. And some commentaries even say that the animals didn't become predators at this stage of the creation either. Lions were not meat eaters then. And they had only plants, vegetables, plant foods. However, as the Torah goes on, go to chapter 6, where we find that we know that the people did evil.
Pasuk.
We're going to skip ahead. That God destroyed basically all of humanity. We know in the flood, and He's going to destroy them. Only Noach and his children were saved. And if you look in chapter 9, pasuk 1, open up chapter 9, pasuk 1. What page do you have for me?
14.
Page 14. Go ahead, Ezra.
And Hashem said to Noah and his sons and said unto them, be fruitful and
Is
multiply
that-
and replenish the earth.
Wait. You the first word wasn't wrong? God blessed.
And Hashem blessed.
Blessed. I didn't hear the word blessed. Did you
And
say the
Hashem
word blessed?
Noah and his sons and said unto them, be fruitful, multiply, and replenish the earth. And the fear of you and the dread of you should be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every fowl in the air, upon all the movers upon the earth, and upon all the fishes of the sea. Into your hand are they delivered. Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you, even as the green herb have I given you all things. But flesh with the life thereof, which is the blood thereof, shall ye not eat. And surely your blood of your lives will I require, at the hand of every beast will I require it, and at the hand of a man, and at the hand of every man's brother will I require the life of man. Whose sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed, for the image of Hashem he made, for Hashem made he man. And you be you fruitful and multiply and bring forth abundantly in the earth and multiply therein. And Hashem spake unto Noah.
Okay, that's enough. That's enough. So we see that included in what they're supposed to eat now, this new civilization is
Meat.
right.
What about
give you
what
meat
about-
and
what-
fish.
What about chapter
Yeah.
4:4 though? That came before. That's what I was looking
What's in
for.
4:4?
And Abel he also brought the firstlings of his flock and the fat thereof, and the wood of respect unto Abel and his offerings.
He brought an offering to God. It doesn't say that he ate it. Not all offerings do eat the flesh of them. It
Well,
doesn't say that
why
he
is
was
he having
eating
a
it.
flock if it's not?
Well, many reasons. Cattle is good for the skins, for the wool. There's many reasons to have flocks. It doesn't say that he was eating it.
Eating it, I see.
So we see that here it sounds like God is allowing man for the first time to eat meat. Rav Kook makes a big point of that in his essay called "The Vision of Vegetarianism and Peace."
Was that
Interesting essay by Rav Kook.
Was Rav Kook himself a vegetarian, or a Jewish
Yeah.
let me rephrase, a Jewish vegetarian, a Jewish vegetarian. So, which means that he during Kol he abstained from meat, just meat on Shabbat and Chagi.
The answer is Rav Kook was not a vegetarian, but his student was the Rav Nazir. He's known as the Nazirite, Rabbi David Cohen. But famously, he has a tshuva, a letter which he wrote to his son, in which he instructs his son not to become a vegetarian. And as I said, he has an entire essay about vegetarianism. Try to give you the basic idea that the way he presents it. But of course, there's many different opinions on the topic. But this is the basic place to begin. Why is there discrepancy between what Adam Arishon is told in chapter 1 and what Noach is told in chapter 9? Okay, yes, Hirsch.
Excuse me, sir. So I'm not a vegetarian vegan, but what is since we're discussing Rav Kook and vegetarianism, what does halacha or anything regarding Torah have to do with vegetarianism with vegan? Is it an argument?
That's what this class is about. So we started off with seeing the psukim and asking the question. We started off by saying that there is a mitzvah in the Torah to eat meat in the korbanot, but of course, Rav David Cohen, a student of Rav Kook, who was a vegetarian, never had meat, and he said, when the Beit HaMikdash is built, I'll have to probably break my vow. I'll probably have to pay for it, whatever it is, but until then, I don't have to eat meat now. What about, there's another mitzvah to eat. When is there a mitzvah to eat meat? Right, there's the concept that you should honor the Shabbat and enjoy the Shabbat by having meat and wine, and it's a mitzvah both on the festivals and on Shabbat that you should have meat. This comes from the idea that in the day when there was a temple, you would bring the sacrifices to the temple. You'd come three foot festivals, the three regalim as they're known. You would bring a sacrifices, part of which would be eaten by you and your family in Jerusalem. And so the idea of eating meat seems to be, from there we took this idea that you should always celebrate the festivals by enjoying meat. So how does this all fit in together into one cohesive picture? Someone had a comment? Someone wanted to speak? Or raise their hand?
I remember years ago that there was a question on this, one of those raging things that sometimes the students sometimes get here. And we actually got somebody sent, a couple of guys went over to the Rabbanut for an actual ruling, and they said if somebody's a vegetarian because they find meat disgusting, which is different than if they're doing it for environmental impact, but if they find meat to be disgusting, then not only should they not have meat on Shabbos, but if they have meat, they should eat it during the week and eat the meal that they view as the better meal on Shabbos.
Interesting. Yeah. One more pasuk that I'd like to show you in the Torah. Once we have the Chumash open, and that is in the book of Bamidbar. We find that the Jews there's two other sources I want to show you. First in Bamidbar Yud Aleph, Bamidbar 11. Find it, guys. What page?
Bar 11.
Bamidbar 11, chapter 11. Verse 4 tells a story that there was a group of people that were very hungry in the desert. Jewish people coming out of Egypt walked through the desert for how many years?
Walking something?
For how many years?
40?
40 years. And it says that they had a craving. Pasuk 4. They had a craving. And they said, go ahead, Ezra.
In the next amount of multitude.
What page do you have?
I have 272.
272. Go ahead.
And the next multitude that was among them fell lusting, and the children of Israel also up again and said, who shall give us flesh to eat?
Stop. So there was a multitude who had a lust, and they said, who will give us meat? So it sounds like the Jewish people wanted meat. What were they eating every day?
Man.
What's that?
I don't know.
Exactly, that's what man means. What is it? What is that? Exactly. So they couldn't deal with that any longer, and they lusted for meat. They see that they were eating meat. And Moshe Rabbeinu responds, verse 13, God tells him, go give him meat. And what does Moshe say?
When should I have flesh to give unto all the people? For they weep unto me, saying, give us flesh that we may eat. I am not able to bear all the people alone, because it is too heavy for me.
Sounds like the people were sinning by asking this. They were being a little lustful, and it's associated, definitely wanting meat is associated here with the sin of complaining against God, and they get punished. Keep going. Pasuk, go to 19 now. Go to 19. One second.
Ye
Go to
shall
verse
not
19.
eat 1 day, nor 2 days, nor 5 days, neither 10 days, nor 20 days.
Keep going.
But even a whole month until it come out of your nostrils, and it be loathsome unto you, because that ye have despised the Lord which is among you, and have looked before him, saying, why came we forth out of Egypt?
So the story goes on that definitely sounds like, until it comes out of your nostril, I'm going to give you so much. So it's a punishment. And then what happens? What comes? What's it called in Hebrew? What does God bring? Keep going. Pasuk 31.
Okay,
Pasuk 31, next page, page 2.
It says,
73.
All of them camping said to the of Israel, and there went forth a wind from the Lord and brought quails from the sea and let them fall by the
What's that in Hebrew? Quails?
Quails.
You can go to the store and order this, by the way. Some stores.
Shalotim? No.
Slav. It's a
Slav.
sin. Slav. The Slav in the Hebrew is quail. So they had birds, a special type of birds, which came all at once, and they came all over the camp. Go ahead, what happened? Keep reading.
And let them fall by the camp as if it were a day's journey on the side, and it were a day's journey on the other side, round about the camp, and as it were 2 cubits high upon the face of the earth.
Keep going.
And the people stood up all the day and all the night, and all the next day, and they gathered the quails. He that gathered at least gathered 10 homers, and they spread them all abroad for themselves around about the camp. And while the flesh was yet between their teeth, and ere it was true, the wrath of the Lord was kindled against the people, and the Lord smote the people with a very great plague. And he called the name of that place
Kivrot, which means graves of. Keep going. Tava means lust. Graves of lust.
Kibbur HaTava, because there they buried the people that lusted, and the people journeyed from Kibbur.
Okay, stop. So that's the next story. Next episode we find in the Torah is that definitely associated with lust. Meat can bring you to do bad things, to rebel against God. God punishes them, some strange punishment, and they got this quail to form of meat, and this whole concept of there being a group of people that were lusting is associated with the eating of the meat. And then there's one more source that I want to show you in the Torah, and then I'll take your questions, and that is in the book of Devarim. So far we saw the two verses in Bereshit, right? 1 and 9, Adam, Arishon, and Noach. Then we saw in that we mentioned that there's mitzvot to eat the meat of the sacrifices. And then we saw the story in Bamidbar that the Jewish people were, when they came out of Egypt, they had some kind of a lust for meat, which was inappropriate. God seems to punish them. Maybe it was connected with their rebelliousness against God, who left them for 40 years in the desert and made sure that they all died out so that only their children can go into the land of Israel. But it's part of a context. But then the last source I want to show you is in the book of Dvarim. Let me just do the last source and then I'll take your questions. Dvarim, Yud Bet, 12. Dvarim 12, what page do you have? Verse 20.
Verse 20.
Dvarim 12, verse 20, what page?
Oh, Devarim.
Dvarim 12.
Yotet, top. I have it on page 370, and then verse 12 is on the next page.
I'm just using Safari.
Beam low top.
One second. What page?
371.
Okay, does everybody see where we're reading now? Dvarim 12, verse 20, page 371. How come I can't see it? Because no, that's doesn't seem right. Dvarim. Oh, sorry. Dvarim 12, I said, not Dvarim 20.
So 12:20, right?
Chapter 12.
Oh.
Chapter 12.
Chapter 12, we're in
Chapter 12.
20.
354.
Chapter 12. I thought you said chapter 20.
No, I said chapter 12. That's what something was going wrong there, and I didn't understand. It's
Okay.
page 357.
All right. And then
Yaakov, will you read for us?
Once I get there,
Sorry, Ezra.
So, Pasuk 20.
Pasuk 20, chapter
You
12.
said third 20, Pasuk 12.
I think it might be my mistake. It doesn't matter. Whoever made a mistake
who
made a
would
mistake.
you like to read?
I'd like Alex to read.
Oh, what a tzaddik.
English.
Yes, please do the English.
Only English?
Yes.
Gotcha. Completely forgot.
For this class only.
Gotcha. When the Lord thy God shall enlarge thy border, as he hath promised thee, and thou shalt say, very English.
Yes, it's very old translation.
Yeah, I will cat flesh, because thy soul longeth to eat flesh, thou mayest.
I will cat flesh. I will eat flesh, I think it should be. I will eat flesh. Not I will cat flesh.
It says eat.
Eat.
Wow.
It's just
It's hard to
It's
read.
very, yeah, it's
I think yours might be a little.
I don't know if these open, yeah, it is.
This translation from 1611.
Yeah,
so.
right, and maybe it's just cat and
No, we're not
It literally
eating,
says
no
eat.
cats, eat. I will eat flesh.
Something with the print.
yeah.
Because
Because thy soul longeth to eat flesh, thou mayest eat flesh whatsoever thy soul lusteth after.
So here we have in the book of Dvarim, the Torah says you're allowed to eat meat. Even if you lust to eat meat, it's okay. What does it all care about? Keep going.
If the place which the Lord thy God hath chosen to put his name there be too far from thee, then thou shalt kill of thy herd and of thy flock, which the Lord hath given thee, as I have commanded thee, and thou shalt eat in thy gates whatsoever thy soul lusteth after. Continue.
Yep.
Even as the roebuck and the hart is eaten, so thou shalt eat them. The unclean and the clean shall eat of them alike. Only be sure that thou eat not the blood, for the blood is the life, and thou mayest not eat the life without the flesh.
Yeah, it keeps going, but we're going to go ahead, skip to verse 26 now.
Good. Only thy holy things which thou hast, and thy vows thou shalt take, and go unto the place which the Lord shall choose.
Keep going.
And thou shalt offer thy burnt offerings, the flesh and the blood, on the altar of the Lord thy God, and the blood of thy sacrifices shall be poured out upon the altar of the Lord thy God, and thou shalt eat the flesh. Observe and hear all these words which I command thee, that it may go well with thee, and with thy children after thee forever, when thou dost that which is good and right in the sight of the Lord thy God.
Okay, so here, I'll just clarify because the English is kind of old. But basically what the Torah sets up, it says, well, you're gonna want to eat meat. What's the problem? What was the first sentence that you read? When God expands your borders. Oh, I can't eat meat because I'm far. What? What does being expanded borders have anything to do with eating meat? We see that the concept was meat originally was only allowed to be eaten as a korban. Now, in the days before we came into the land of Israel, there was no city that was where the Beit Mikdash was. You could bring a sacrifice. You were either in the camp of Israel, so you had the Beit Mikdash right with you. But when you have large borders, you're far away. You can't bring a sacrifice. Sounds like only then the Torah said, in planning for the future, when you're in the land of Israel, okay, we're going to have two systems. There's when you bring a sacrifice to the temple, then you have to treat it with holiness. You're only allowed to eat the meat of the sacrifices if you are pure, ritually pure. That was always the system up until now. Then, from now on, when you come into the land of Israel and you have large borders, it's impractical. Just because you want to have a barbecue, you're in Eilat, you're in Metula, you're in Haifa. That's a far way away from Jerusalem. What every time you want to have a steak, you're going to have to go to Jerusalem. The Torah allows and says it's called basar ta'ava, meat from lust, because you want to eat. You don't want it to be part of the ritual of your worship, of the Beit HaMikdash. You just want a snack. You just want to eat meat. The Torah says it's allowed. It's allowed, and not only that, you don't have to keep the rules of ritual purity and impurity. Clean or unclean, you can have that meat. It has to be kosher meat. We'll see. You have to make sure that there's no blood. All the rules of, the Kashrut, which we're going to study about, they apply. But we see that this is the last discussion in the Torah directly about eating meat, where they introduce this concept that there's two levels of eating meat. Eating meat as a korban, as a sacrifice. Maybe that's even part of the elevated mitzvah, obligation of the Torah to eat meat. And then there's meat, we call it your ordinary meat. Your regular old meat, just because you're hungry, and this is part of what we do. That is allowed. You have to do shchita, you have to not eat the blood, but that's allowed wherever you are, and you don't have to go up to the Beit HaMikdash for that. So these are the psukim. Now, what do we make from all this? We're going to talk about in a minute. Now I'll take the questions. Hirsch was waiting.
So you said that you mentioned that it is a mitzvah to eat on Shabbat.
Yeah, it's not a mitzvah like one of the 613. So one of the 613, as I said, to eat the korbanot and to eat the korban Pesach, for example. And on Shabbat, it's a rabbinical mitzvah that you're supposed to really more on the festivals as a commemoration for when there was a Beit HaMikdash, then there was an actual sacrifice you had to bring and eat that meat. But even nowadays, there's a mitzvah to have meat on the festivals, and some people say also Shabbat. Also say Shabbat, yeah.
So obviously I know you're not supposed to mix meat and dairy. Is there anything regarding mixing different types of kosher meats together?
No.
No, okay.
I mean, it depends. Depends how they're treated. Like liver has a different amount of blood in it than any other type of meat, any other part of the body.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's rules about how to get the blood out of the liver, which is different than the rules from the other parts of the body, of the flesh. And so that could be complicated mixing that. But once you've gotten the blood out,
Section and everything is all good.
once you've gotten the blood out, then there's no problem mixing meats. Yeah. Mixed meats. Then what's that called? In where are we? Have you never had Me'urav Yerushalmi? Jerusalem mix? It's the name of a dish. You go to the store, you order Me'urav Yerushalmi, mixed meats. It's primarily in your organs. The mixed Yerushalmi meat.
On a grip, there's like a basic place.
We'll talk about the kashrut and how kosher these are, but we'll talk about it. Yes.
What symbolizes the minhag of eating fish on the dinner of Shabbat?
Fish is a symbol of fruitfulness, because a few reasons. One is that they have lots of babies; they reproduce a lot, very easily, and also they were not explicitly destroyed in the flood, and so they might represent some kind of purity in that way. And but basically, it's a symbol of fertility, and, all the way back to the story of the creation, where God blesses them that they should be fruitful and multiply, separately than man being blessed. In any case, good question, but not for now. Let's go back to vegetarianism. Seeing we only have 3 minutes left in this class, 3 to 5 minutes, I'll just briefly tell you the basic approach that Rav Kook presented. And it's more complicated because Rav Kook said that in the ideal world, if man were moral, perhaps we wouldn't be eating meat at all. All the animals, maybe in the future day, they'll be on a higher level than they are now. But basically, since we see that the permission to eat meat was given to Noah after man had sinned, shows us that we're not living in the ideal world. And in the non-ideal world that we are acting in and living in, the Torah says we need to make sure that humanity reaches the high level of morality, which we expect of it, that God was training us for. And during that training period, it sounds like to not eat meat would be confusing to us. We'd mix up our values so much that we wouldn't, like I know some people, I think they had a survey. If you saw someone you didn't know, a stranger, dying, and your beloved Fido, the dog, your favorite pet, they're both drowning, who would you save? I think most Americans chose their pet over their human that was dying. And so this is just a symbolic way of saying that we're not where we should be in understanding the priorities of life, the value of human life versus animal life, and to say, I'm not going to eat animals would sort of run counterproductive to the primary goal of Judaism that we have is to teach ourselves and all of humanity about the primacy of human life and many other moral distinctions which are there. And so to remove all the distinctions before we're ready for it, this way Rav Kook presents it, would be counterproductive and not educational. Although maybe in the ideal world, just like we said, in Bereshit chapter 1, we don't see men eating flesh. That's something that we're not necessarily ready for until maybe Mashiach comes or something like that. And so there's a lot more to say about it. I want to conclude, if I may. I'm going to take questions. But bottom line is we see that the Torah does have a mitzvah in some cases to eat meat, and it does allow you to eat meat within the certain halachot. There's 6 Kashrut laws, which we're going to go in quite some detail. The 6 laws which somewhat temper and lead us in the direction that we should moderate our consumption of meat. And the 6 are as follows. Number 1, you can't have flesh from a living animal. Okay? It's called Ever Min Hachai. That's actually one of the famous Noachide laws. Number 2, you have to do shchita. There's a certain ritual way to kill the animal, and you can't just eat roadkill. Number 3, you're not allowed to have the blood. So you have to do something to take the blood out of the flesh before you can eat it. And the blood, I guess, we even say it today, bloodthirsty. It's a certain element of cruelty associated with that. Maybe the Torah is guiding us to temper our eating of meat and to not take in whatever cruelty is just many times associated with the industry. Number 4, you have to cover the blood of certain types of animals and birds after shchita. Number 5, you're not allowed to slaughter a mother animal and her son on the same day, because maybe to train us to stay away from cruelty. Number 6 is another mitzvah called shiluach hakan, sending away the mother bird. Even when you want to take the eggs to eat or the chicks to eat, you have to send away the mother first. Maybe with all these 6 different mitzvot, and we'll see there a lot more details of shchita and of course eating meat. Perhaps the Torah wants to recognize that even though there might be something inherently problematic with eating meat, both in terms of the ideal world and also in terms of the cruelty or the lust which it might engender, somehow we have these different mitzvot which moderate this consumption of meat. As I said, there's a lot more to be said about vegetarianism, but as an introduction, before we actually talk about the laws of how to make meat kosher and which animals are kosher and which are not kosher, this is because today's our first day back, I figured I'll start with that. And it's a chapter in the book. It's chapter 14, if anybody wants to see the Hebrew. Now I'll take the questions before the break. Yeah.
What's the halacha or your interpretation or understanding of the Jewish perspective on hunting?
It's another chapter.
It's
a different. That's not really for eating. So obviously.
I mean, you hunt to eat.
Well, you can't, because if you hunt and you kill the animal, it's not properly shechted. Even if it's a kosher animal, it's not shechted, and so it would not be kosher.
You can hunt with nets.
If you hunt with nets, then you're hunting for
That's
the sake
trapping.
of. That's trapping. That's not good.
So
Going out with the rifle to shoot the animals would not give you kosher meat. So that's sport, and that's another chapter. It's about cruelty to animals, which we're going to have another shir about. Yes.
I appreciate that.
Fish are eaten on Shabbat because they're seen as a symbol of plenty, or what is it a symbol of?
Fish, symbol of plenty and reproduction. Yes. Alex.
Yeah. I just don't really understand why it's a valid argument to say oh, we're not ready to be vegetarian. It's not our stage yet. We're not there yet. I'm not saying personally I'm not a vegetarian, I'm not a vegan. I'm just saying I don't really understand the validity of that reasoning.
Right.
Because we
Right.
can easily say shouldn't we just train ourselves, or shouldn't we become try to become vegetarian?
Right.
Was it really overstepping our bounds to become vegetarian?
Right. So it's a raging debate until today, and more and more. There are even some rabbis who are saying maybe we should be training. Maybe we should be training ourselves. You just heard about the Rav Nazir, the Rav David Cohen, who was a vegetarian, and there are rabbis today that, especially with the industry being the way it is, we won't get into it now. We don't have time. That more people should become vegetarian. I briefly mentioned this concept that how it could be uneducational to be, because you're showing more care for the animals than you're showing for humans, right? There's still wars out there, and there's cruelty to humans, and maybe we should take care of the animals. And
I view it as the opposite. I view it as if there's something that we can easily control, why not do, like, meaning it's kind of like.
right. So it's not easy. It's not so easy. Yeah,
Regulations are.
I agree.
That argument is some rebuilding at some.
No, I hear you, Alex. You're absolutely right. Alex, you're right that it's not a simple answer,
It's a work in progress.
but
Progress.
okay. Another question somebody else had? Malti, did you have a question or no? That's good. Okay, we'll stop here. Give you a little break before the next class. Bezrat Hashem, we'll have another class tomorrow. Continuing on the loss of Kashrut.